It's our ISKCON tradition, maybe beyond day, of great personalities in our disciplic line. We sing this wonderful song. So this morning we're observing the disappearance day of Jagannath Das Babaji Radhakananda Das. So at the end we'll conduct Bhagavad Gita, the Bhagavatam verse and discussion, then speaks something about both of these great personalities. So we'll start with the Bhagavatam. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Suyagno navnayam ne sete mudhayam anushochata yashota yonavakteha sanadrishyeta karhachit Suyagyo navnayam chete mudhayam anushochata yakshota yonuvakteha sa nadrishyeta karhachit. Suyagyo navnayam chete mudhayam anushochataha yakshotayo navakteha sanadrishyeta karhachit. Suyagyo navnayam chete mudhayam anushochataha sanadrishyeta karhachit. Suyagyo navnayam shete mudhayam anushochataha yakshotayo navakteha sa nadrishyeta karhachit. Ladies. Suyagyo navnayam chete mudhayam anushochata yakshota sanadrishyeta karhachit. Suyagya, the king named Suyagya. Nano, indeed. I am this. Shete, lies. Mudha, oh, foolish people. Yam, whom. Anushochata, you cry for. Yaha, he who. Shrota, the hearer. Yaha, he who. Anuvakta, the speaker, iha, in this world, saha, he, na, not, drishyeta, is visible, karhichit, at any time. Translation, Yamaraj continued, "Oh, lamenters, you are all fools. The person named Suryagya for whom you lament is still lying before you and has not gone anywhere. Then what is the cause of your lamentation? Previously, he heard you and replied to you, but now, not finding him, you are lamenting. This is contradictory behavior, for you have never actually seen the person within the body who heard you and replied. There is no need for your lamentation, for the body you have always seen is lying here." Report by Srila Prabhupada. This instruction by Yamaraj in the form of a boy is understandable even for a common man. A common man who considers the body, the self, is certainly comparable to an animal. Yasyatma buddhi kunapetri dhatuke sa eva go kara. But even a common man can understand that after death, the person is gone, although the body is still there. A dead man's relatives lament that the person has gone away, for a common man sees the body but cannot see the soul. As described in Bhagavad Gita, Dehi nosman yata dehe, the soul, the proprietor of the body, is within. After death, when the breath within the nostrils has stopped, one can understand that the person within the body who was hearing and replying has now gone. Therefore, in effect, the common man concludes that actually the spirit soul was different from the body and has now gone away. Thus, even a common man coming to his senses can know that the real person who was within the body and was hearing and replying was never seen. For that which was never seen, what is the need of lamentation? The Bhagavatam is expanding the message of Bhagavad Gita. It's not a different message. It's Krishna's message. It's literally the literary form of Krishna. So what Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita and the literary form of Krishna in Bhagavatam, they're identical. The only difference being Srimad Bhagavatam is the graduate study. So the elements are there within Bhagavad Gita and then expanded in the Bhagavatam. Several appreciations of this section. It's a classic Bhagavatam, a story within a story within a story within a story within a story. And it's interesting to know, the sequence of stories within the story within the story. And particularly interesting is the fact that the person that's telling the story within the story within the story is Hiranyakashipu. And he's very clear about the soul and the body are different. You're not this body. It's like he knows at least the first part of chapter 2, Bhagavad Gita. He's a scholar. He's a scholar, and he's an atheist. So, taking Prabhupada's standard, on what basis do we say someone is a mudha? Well, here the standard is they don't know the difference between the body and the soul. That's certainly a mudha. But then a demon, Prabhupada would say it bluntly. Do you accept the personality of Godhead? No, then you're a demon. Quick test. Do you accept Krishna as the personality of Godhead? No, you're a demon. Abhijananti mam mudha manushim tanamasha. Do you think Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead? No, demon, mudha. Boldly he would speak like that and say, people don't like to hear me speak like that. They say, Swamiji, you're a sadhu, you say nice things, you don't call people demons. It's just speaking what Krishna says. If you want to fault Krishna, then go ahead and fault Krishna, but I'm speaking what Krishna says. Mudha. So here, this is Yamaraj, that's Hiranyakashipu, the demon, speaking transcendental knowledge. As soon as he's done with all this transcendental knowledge, including the description of the sanctioner of the soul passing from the body, he then takes the position of opposed to the person who sanctions the soul passing from the body. He's really a confused demon with transcendental knowledge. It's fascinating. But that's his main, you could say, disqualification is his being opposed to Vishnu. Boy, was he opposed to Vishnu. So much so that as soon as he understood his son was a devotee of Vishnu, he wanted to kill his son. And when Vishnu appeared, he wanted to kill Vishnu. And he's like, through and through, demon. Prabhupada would say that modern demons, they're small Hiranyakashipus. They have their other way of philosophically or otherwise wanting to kill Krishna. Scientists and philosophers and other such people. God is not a person, and so forth. Small Hiranyakashipus. Another appreciation as I was reading this section is Prabhupada didn't pull things out of the air. How many times have we heard, those who have heard Prabhupada's lectures and conversations and so forth, have heard him say exactly this example. There's the dead body. Why do you say they've gone away? There's the dead body. That person, exactly the same. The logic is exactly the same. Why are you lamenting? Why is someone so foolish? There's, in this case, it's the king, but your relative, your friend, your whoever it is. There's the person. If you think the body is the person, there's the body. Why are you lamenting? And then, in contrast, then they have an understanding the person has gone away, but that person who has gone away is someone who they've never seen anyway, the soul. They've never seen the soul that was hearing and responding, and that soul has gone away, so that which you haven't seen, how can you lament? It's quite, logically it's quite illogical. That's the, Prabhupada is several times in the purport saying a common man can understand. And so, the implication is persons who don't understand are less than a common man. They're animal. not accepting the position of the soul distinct from the body, just as the previous verses are saying, from where that soul came before it entered the body, the soul has gone to the same place, wherever that soul had came from, the place of souls, I guess. So, why lament? It's kind of like checkmate. Be realistic about what is it that you're lamenting over. Then another couple of comments. One is for devotees that are dealing with devotee families who lose a family member. I'm looking at Malati because there was a situation not so long ago in her GBC area, in Detroit area. The father of two small children, while I was visiting, suddenly, no warning at all, just suddenly left with a 1.5-month-old child and a 5.5-year-old boy who was just a darling, brilliant, sweet kid that his father was taking such wonderful care of, and no notice at all. He just disappeared. Shri Shri Radha Shama Sundara ki jai, Shri Shri Gaurnitai ki jai, Shri Shri Krishna Balaram ki jai. I think my sense was Malati was concerned that I didn't pull out the Bhagavatam and start reading the Suyogya section to the family members. I knew better than doing that. So, advice is know your audience and be very careful when you're dealing with persons who are grieving over the loss of a family member or someone dear to them. Hearing Bhagavad Gita's message on this topic or the Suyogya topic may not be the best thing. In this case, it was very clear it wasn't the best thing, and I didn't do that. And Malati was greatly relieved that I hadn't done that when I informed her what happened. As transcendentalists, we should know when the soul transits from this life to the next life, exactly what Bhagavad Gita says, there's no cause for lamentation. Especially, let's say in the life of a devotee, they're going from their present situation to some other situation of service to Krishna. They're being relieved of the entanglement of the current situation and being given a fresh start to serve Krishna blank slate. Of course, carrying impressions and so forth. But while we may know that, we should also know that identification with the body is very strong. And only in the right circumstance, when the relationship is right and you know the person very well, can these messages be shared. And commonly it's hold off till the right circumstance and time passes and so on. But in this case, this is Hiranyakashipu and Diti and the Daitya dynasty, and he's not holding back at all. He's giving transcendental knowledge very directly, very strongly, in multiple ways. So as aspiring Vaishnavas, we should be very familiar with this section, expanding on the message of chapter 2 Bhagavad Gita. And for that matter, the whole message of Bhagavad Gita. Like, for example, Yudhishthira Maharaj certainly knew the philosophy. And he knew that the battle of Kurukshetra was something that Krishna wanted. And therefore he and his brothers went forward with the Kurukshetra battle. Nonetheless, Yudhishthira was in a state of great lamentation because of his cause for the death of so many bodies, which, to repeat, Krishna wanted. It was Krishna's plan. So why lament over something that's an enactment of Krishna's plan? So affection for others is natural, and one can say misplaced affection because Krishna wanted it. Kind of like, when the devotees all over the world, because I travel sometimes, and when we hear stories of Krishna's killing demons and it finally happens, everyone goes, Haribo! And I was thinking, when that happens, I sometimes think, boy, if there's new people in the audience, they must wonder, what's with these Hare Krishna devotees? And the demon was killed, Haribo! Because after all, it's death. And, you're not supposed to celebrate about death, somebody dying and getting killed. That's not nice. Not what a saintly person does. Celebrate when somebody dies and gets killed. The life of a transcendentalist isn't something that's understood by a materialist. Now, once again, it's Yamaraj who's speaking, and Yamaraj is taking the form of a little boy. And I don't know if you have noticed, but I have, when little children speak something that's transcendental, it has a special power. Again, I'm looking at Malati, and Prabhupada would speak about her daughter Saraswati, who would speak transcendental knowledge. I mean, the classic is going to a complete stranger, businessman in an airport, and tugging on his sleeve and saying, do you know who is Krishna? And the person would say, no. And she would say, Prabhupada repeats, she would say, Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Now, hearing that from one of us, they may go, yeah, right. But hearing it from a little child, they go, oh, Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. I had this experience. It's just an example of this. At some point in time, I was serving in Boston along with Naranjana Maharaj, and there was a daily Harinam at the Boston Common. Really good place. The red line and the green line subways come right up, and it's right across the street from Washington Street, or it's a shopping area, and so at lunch hour, the place is packed. So we were out there in the packed audience and got it a little bit formal. There was like a little wooden platform that we would sit on, a wooden platform rather than just mats on the floor, so there was a little, little dignity to the presentation. And during one particular summer, Rabindra Sarup Prabhu's son, Yudhishthira, came to visit his mom and dad in Boston. And Yudhishthira, being a Gurukul boy, knew all kinds of things. He knew how to play harmonium, he knew how to sing, and when he would sit down and sing during the lunch hour, boy, was there a crowd of people, more than when any one of us would sing, just because of the little boy singing so nicely. And one of the routines that we did at that time, some places still do it, periodically, every 15, 20 minutes, you stop, and someone stands and addresses the crowd and says, who are we? What are we doing? And when Yudhishthira stood up and said the same thing that we would say, the crowd is going like this, yeah. Because it was coming from the mouth of a small boy, speaking transcendental knowledge. There's power in our youth saying the same things that we might say, but has some special charm, at least. Hearing from a small body instead of a medium or old body. Therefore, Yamaraj chose, rather than showing the form of Yamaraj, he showed the form of a small boy, speaking with a small boy's position or voice in that sense. Basically admonishing the adults. You're big, I'm little, and you're acting so foolish. Fortunately, I know better, but you should also know better. And don't lament. We have a great resource in families. Of course, there's great resource in brahmacharis and great resource in sannyasis, and there's also great resource in families where there's small children, provided the parents are setting the right standard and example. And little sharing with Malati right now, that little boy in the Detroit suburbs, the little boy was completely calm. Mom was a mess, visibly. And the little boy was completely calm. He knew what happened. Dad's gone. Dad, who has given him everything, I'm sure he was feeling something, that loss. But he was so composed. And the only interaction I had with him was in front of his mom, so I was very careful of what I asked him to speak about. Basically, what I said was, so Malati can know what I said. No, for the future. I said, you have a small brother. He's only 1.5 months old. Your father gave to you something very valuable. Now your father's gone. So you take that role with your younger brother. You're only 6.5, whatever. But he's really small. And as he grows, on behalf of your father, you act as the instrument of your father and you give to your younger brother what your father gave you. In that way you can serve your father, even in his physical absence. So our younger generation can serve not only the little brothers and sisters, but they can serve our founder Acharya and the mission of our predecessor Acharyas if given proper care and training and affection and all things that persons in little bodies need, so that they can feel protected and share with others that sense of safety. Not just the words, but it was very clear this young boy felt protected. I mean, at least that was my sense. In his eyes, in his words, in his poise, in his everything, is his demeanor. Dad's gone, but I'm protected. Because his dad had given him the sense of protection through transcendental knowledge. His mother said in front of the son that my husband felt how unfortunate it wasn't until much later in my life that I was introduced to Krishna Bhakti, and I would like to not have the same thing happen with my son. I want to give him Krishna Bhakti. And so his father invested so much in, she pointing to her son, in his Krishna Bhakti. And my comment was, he did a really good job. He's very obviously feeling shelter in Krishna. So that's our responsibility, whether we're those of us that aren't parents of children. We're part of a larger community of devotees. Some of you may know, visiting here in Vrindavan presently is Kamlesh Krishna. Is he in the audience? Kamlesh? Kamlesh Krishna recently became the global Child Protection Office Director. He's from the UK. He's a fantastic person. And if you happen to get the good opportunity to meet him, welcome him to Vrindavan, because he's here for that purpose, not only in Vrindavan, but as he's going to move around for this coming year. Protection of the children, in one sense, means so that they're safe, and then the higher sense of protection is to give them Krishna Bhakti, because Krishna Bhakti will help them be safe from all kinds of things that are very dangerous in this world. A great, great resource. That's an essential part of our, ISKCON. ISKCON isn't just adult programs and the kids go and play somewhere. They're part of our Krishna family too, our Krishna movement. They're to be protected by the adult devotees in various ways. Great, great resource. And there's many other great resources, so won't go there just now because of time. Those are some thoughts on the verse for this morning, the Bhagavatam verse this morning. And it's already 8:45, so I'm going to speak a little bit about the two personalities whose disappearance day is today. Chronologically, we'll start with Rasikananda. Rasikananda is a disciple of Srinivasa Acharya, and Srinivasa Acharya, in our line of disciplic succession, followed Jiva Goswami. Of the three, Narottam and Srinivas and Shyamananda, somehow they're all like perfect devotees, but Srinivas is identified as the successor, and Srinivasa Acharya had as a great disciple Rasikananda. Rasikananda was born in a family, a royal family, and much like great acharyas, from his childhood showed incredible interest in hearing and learning the scriptures, and had there's many things to say, but had a very, very strong desire, naturally so, to become situated under the care of a great Vaishnav as his spiritual master. And as he began contemplating like that, his meditation became more intense and more intense and more intense. And when intense feeling of hankering comes, there's a certain ecstasy and there's a certain sadness also in the absence of that coveted object. So one evening he was unable to sleep. In the early morning hours, he dozed, and in his dream, Srinivas appeared. In his dream, he said, "Very soon I will come, give you shelter." So the series of events, he was just calling and calling and calling, and he came as was indicated in his dream, and he took his shelter. Particularly along with training under Jiva Goswami, Srinivas was trained under Jiva Goswami. Srinivas trained his disciple Rasikananda very nicely as he was trained, and engaged him in worship of a deity. And the worship of the deity, particularly Rasikananda is known as a Rasika Bhakta, or a highly evolved ecstatic devotee. So ecstatic devotees worship deities too. There's the regulative elements of deity worship, and there's very, very elevated features of deity worship. And after some time, having established that deity worship very nicely, then Srinivas sent him to travel and preach Krishna consciousness. And he's known, renowned for the range of persons who he brought to Krishna consciousness, very similar to Narottam Das Thakur, all kinds of people, vast range of persons, including even animals. There's, of course, the example in Chaitanya Charitamrita of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu inspiring the tigers and elephants and forest animals to chant and dance in ecstasy. And Rasikananda did the same. There's a very famous story and nice paintings of that famous story where some wild elephants were charging him, and he didn't become fearful at all. He just chanted the Lord's name, and they became stunned, hearing him chanting the holy name, stopped in their tracks, and with their trunks they began chanting the holy name. A miracle. And great personalities, we know about their miracles, but the miracle is more that the consciousness they carry rather than how the miracle may affect other living entities. The miracle of being in this world and being totally absorbed in ecstatic love for Krishna while in this world. I'll tell a little Tamal Krishna Maharaj story, just it matches this. Tamal Krishna Maharaj was describing one time Prabhupada was in a train going from one place to another place, and they had arranged a private car in the first class train for Prabhupada, and Tamal Krishna Maharaj was posted at the door to keep people out. And you don't cross over Tamal Krishna Maharaj when he wants you out. So that was the arrangement, and the other devotees were together in another car some distance down the train. So Tamal Krishna Maharaj had to go answer the call of nature, and while he was gone, a man came in the car. And when he came back, he was sitting with Prabhupada talking. So Tamal Krishna Maharaj wanted to, get out. But Prabhupada held his hand, let him stay. And the man was saying, "Swamiji, please give your blessings." And Prabhupada was very happy. "Yes, I'll give you my blessings. Tamal, bring the other sannyasis, bring them here to the car." And they all came into the car and said, "My blessing is you become like them." And the man got really nervous and said, "Swamiji, I've got to go now, my family's waiting." And I think there was some part, give the blessing that my daughter finds a good husband or something like that. The blessings of and the power of great personalities is to give Krishna bhakti. It requires Krishna's empowerment to be able to do that, and those that have that power, they wish to give Krishna bhakti. And great, great personalities like Rasikananda can give to anybody. Many nice descriptions of these activities. And finally, because it's his disappearance day, the well-known story of his disappearance. He was living in one place and he requested to go to Ramuna, and when he reached Ramuna, they had ecstatic kirtan, resembling what you read in Chaitanya Charitamrita about Mahaprabhu's ecstatic kirtan. You know that courtyard in Ramuna, those of you who have been there. And he, in the midst of this ecstatic kirtan, he went right before the deity, touched the feet of the deity, and the historical record says he entered into the body of the deity and disappeared. Pretty amazing pastime of disappearance. And so his samadhi is in that courtyard of Rasikananda. And a great limb in the Chaitanya tree for extending Krishna bhakti, because that's very much needed when the great Acharya, let's say Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, through the 6 Goswamis, propagated Krishna consciousness widely through their literatures and so forth. Jiva Goswami continuing, Srinivasa Acharya continuing, Rasikananda continuing. Later generation, a disciple of Rasikananda was the one who instructed Baladev Vidyabhusan in the Sandarbhas of Jiva Goswami in Puri. And thus we have Baladev Vidyabhusan's association and Govinda Bhasya. So in this way, disciplic succession is carried on by great personalities, even beyond their lifetime. And last, Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj, because of time. And our altars all over ISKCON, his picture is on our altar, commonly. And it's so because he gave shiksha to Bhaktivinoda Thakur. At a certain point in time, Bhaktivinoda Thakur went to Vrindavan. And hearing from Jagannath Das Babaji, he accepted him as Shiksha Guru. And it's so on our altar here is a Shiksha line. No small thing. And through that Shiksha of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Jagannath Das Babaji, enriched deeper understandings of bhakti to a suitable vessel or receptacle or receiver of Krishna bhakti. And then Bhaktivinoda Thakur, in his period of writing 100 books, 100 books. Try writing a book. 100 books. Anyway, Jagannath Das Babaji may not have had his name at the bottom of the book, but his instructions helped fill the books. It helped fill the heart of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, who wrote the books. And 2 other things, because of time. Certainly very famous, and how can we not speak about Jagannath Das Babaji confirming the birthplace of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Bhaktivinoda Thakur did the work, but the confirmation came for Bhaktivinoda Thakur from Jagannath Das Babaji, who was so old. He left Vrindavan at the request of Bhaktivinoda Thakur to come to Mayapur, and there he stayed, or in Navadvip. Some of you may have visited the place of Jagannath Das Babaji in Navadvip, where he sat and chanted the holy name. There's a little place where he sat and chanted, and it is said there he saw Krishna. Now that's not so surprising that a great personality can see Krishna, but he saw Krishna. It's for us it's worth hankering for and following the footsteps of Jagannath Das Babaji. So many things to say about his intense absorption in the holy name, with great faith in the holy name. Long descriptions of that. So wanting confirmation that the birthplace of Mahaprabhu was where he had understood it to be, Jagannath Das Babaji, because of his old age, had to be brought in a basket. He was infirm, he couldn't walk. He was so old. Lived to be different versions, but one version is 118 years old. Some give his age older than that. But when he was brought to the birth site, although he was infirm and couldn't walk, he jumped into the air out of the basket, calling out loudly, "Gauranga, Gauranga!" This is the birthplace of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. For us as transcendentalists, that's the topmost confirmation. When the Mahabhagavata confirms. Now, comparatively later, there's an archaeological finding. For some, that's more dramatic. When the excavation that Bhaktisiddhanta was doing of the temple at the birthplace of Mahaprabhu, digging down and down and down and down and down to make the foundation, they found the Adhokshaja Vishnu deity that was the worshipable deity of Jagannath Mishra. Because at one point in time, the Ganga flowed over there, and then the Ganga flowed over the birthplace of Mahaprabhu, and all those things became covered with Ganga mud. And then the course of the Ganga changed again. And so the Adhokshaja Vishnu deity was deep in the ground. So an archaeological evidence, this is the birthplace of Mahaprabhu. For us, far stronger is Jagannath Das Babaji's confirmation. And for Bhaktivinoda Thakur, that was it. This is the birthplace of Mahaprabhu. So we commonly credit finding of the birthplace of Mahaprabhu, or discovering the birthplace of Mahaprabhu, to Bhaktivinoda Thakur, but confirming it, Jagannath Das Babaji. Perfected soul, guiding and inspiring our great Acharya Bhaktivinoda Thakur, then in turn Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, then in turn our founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada. So we're honoring him on his disappearance day. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur ki, Shri Jagannath Das Babaji ki, Shri Rasikananda Prabhu ki, Gaur Premanandi Haribol. So it's 9 o'clock. And traditionally we end at 9 o'clock, right? So thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.